Grant, pleasure to have you on.
Pleasure to be here, Joe. Thanks very much for having me.
You're most welcome. So look, we're doing this in London. This is our first London shoot, second ever live in person. It's a pleasure.
Big city.
It is.
Just in time for World War III.
There we go. There's too much to go into there. I'm curious, what does growth look like to you?
Oh, what does growth look like? Well, look, what did they say? Either you're growing or you're dying. So if we're looking at from a business point of view, if you're making more top line revenue this year than you were last year, it's one way of looking at it. If you're looking at it from a perspective of, how do people say, a growth mindset, whereby you're always looking to add to your skill set, looking to expand your horizons, be it in health, fitness, business, relationships. I'd be of the school of thought that you want to keep a growth mindset at all times and never stop learning and be curious about things. So, yeah, that's, I guess, in the most abstract terms, that's where I'd come in on that one.
Would it be fair, just of what you've told me before, in semi-concluding that you've somewhat lived two lives? You've lived one that's very, I don't want to say corporate, but it's the status quo, so to speak. But then you've done as you called yourself, a maverick. And you've gone around. Could you share a bit more on that?
Yeah. Well, I've somehow managed to keep what you could call a clean CV in terms of, like, if a corporate entity was looking at me, I'm ticking the boxes, and that was something that I looked to do at the outset.
How have you done that?
I think a lot of it stemmed from a job I got a couple of years after I graduated college when I was 22. Mm-hmm. I answered an ad in the Irish Times, which is the main newspaper in Ireland. There was an ad on the front page there, and it was a job whereby you're essentially on one side a journalist, but on the other side an undercover salesman.
Okay.
Right?
How did that work then? What did that look like?
Yeah, you get taught by Dutch people how to operate in an industry called the country report industry. Right. So this was it was a baptism of fire in ways for a young man.
What year are we talking about?
We are talking about 2002.
Okay.
Yeah. The industry still exists. It's obviously been impacted hugely, but back in those days, we were producing newspaper reports. So reports that were inserted into newspapers. I worked for a company that produced reports for the Telegraph. Mm-hmm. And the company also produced reports for the likes of the New York Post in New York, which is, it's essentially a tabloid. And lots of other publications and TV reports, CNBC and the like. And essentially what the role was to go into a target country, and produce a report about doing business there. So I went on to start my own business based on what I learned working for this company. And
how long did it take you from when you started there to starting your own company?
8 months.
8 months.
I worked for them for 8 months.
So you would have been, 23 when you started?
23, yeah. 23,
okay.
Yeah. Literally half my lifetime ago. But yeah, so as I was telling you just before, I was in the opera in Lithuania, and it came to me like the Holy Ghost. Trade magazines, take what they're doing in newspaper reports, and instead, because I knew I could write, and instead make trade magazines about doing business in other countries.
Sure.
Right? So that set me off on a path whereby I spent the next 15 years traveling to 18 different countries and making these reports.
What countries were you traveling to?
Right, so from Latvia, I literally got the train down to Romania. I had planned to go to Qatar first of all.
Okay.
But this was the turn of it was in 2003. So there was the invasion of Iraq was happening, and Central Command, CENTCOM, was based in Qatar. And this was back when we thought that Saddam Hussein did have weapons of mass destruction, right? So he had actually said that Qatar was going to be the first place he bombed. So hence I changed tack and went, you know what, we'll put that one on ice for now, which I did. I returned to Qatar many times after that, but instead we went to Romania. And I got my best friend in on the plan with me. He's now a diplomat for the Irish government. I won't disclose what strategic location he's based in, but it's very strategic. And we spent 6 weeks in Romania, and we interviewed the movers and the shakers, the CEOs of the main companies there. And lo and behold, we made it what was back then a lot of money.
And so was this, you were looking for the places to go to for foreign direct investment for these emerging economies markets? Where would your buyers typically be based in?
So essentially what we're doing is in the meetings, it was like a game of chess. I call it sales chess. Right?
Okay.
Because essentially you are going in as a journalist and you're writing an article about the company.
Right.
But you also have an ulterior motive, because usually you have a pretty girl beside you, right? And the pretty girl is the closer, right? And it was usually her job to, so you would move the pieces on the chessboard during the conversation so that by the end of the conversation, the guy wants to buy an ad and the girl slides over the contract. Now look, you're not making them do anything. They can buy it if they want to. They don't have to buy it. There's generally 3 types of people. Either they always buy, they never buy, and then another third need to be persuaded to buy. Right. So anyway, this was what I was trained in, which is not entirely now, as an older man looking back on it, I certainly wouldn't start a business teaching people how to do it, because there was a duplicitous element at first, because you don't tell them up front you're going to try and sell them an ad. It comes on the back end. So that wasn't, for most guys, you're not taking advantage of old grannies, right? These guys were really the top of the tree businessmen, right? Captains of industry, chief executives who were in command of large companies, right? So they recognize, a lot of them are salesmen themselves. So they like to play the game. Oftentimes they know exactly what was going on, and they still would entertain the meeting because they themselves knew the game and wanted to play the sales chess game, right? So that was how I got my start, was doing that. And the reason I started my own business doing it, because I didn't, with as a salesman in the company that I was working for, I didn't like the pressure I was put under, because I have everyone has their own personal morality, right? My line was that whatever about the methodology that they were using, fine. But my thing was that I didn't want to lie, right? Whereas I had pressure from a sales manager saying, why don't you just say this? Why don't you just say that? And I was like, because that's not the case. I'm not going to compromise my own integrity, right? So hence I thought, okay, I need to get out of this, but I see that they're making money, and I see that this is a way that I can live an adventurous life, travel the world, and that's what I did. But I was then able to do it, to run the operation within the confines of my own morality, whereby, I'm comfortable with everything I was doing, which I think is important.
How did you make the pivot from you're not aligning with the morals that they're teaching you, they're just saying get the sales, to making it your own entity?
Well, you like any company, you register your own business, you get a bank account, you get your contracts ready, do up a mock-up of what it is you're going to produce, and then you go and you produce it. And the difference was a lot of the time in the quality of the product, because a newspaper, I know newspapers have declined there, but generally speaking, the newspaper's only good for a day anyway. Whereas we were making substantive 140-page publications that were, you would get it and you would keep it and refer back to it. Was the idea. Of course, this is all print media.
Would these normally be, say, valid for a year, kind of like a Gartner report?
That was the idea.
Deloitte list, KPMG list.
So there's lots. So there are a good few currently companies that produce really high quality stuff, same methodology, same background, and they're 200-page annual reports, for want of a better word, describe it, or they're interviews with all the top guys throughout the economy. So where did I go? I went essentially we went to Romania, then afterwards Romania, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, Hong Kong, Slovenia, back to Latvia and Lithuania, Malta, Malaysia, Bahrain, Qatar, Abu Dhabi, made one in Ireland as well. And in all of this, so I essentially conducted meetings with about nearly 2,000 chief executives, 1,500, 2,000, somewhere around that number, chief executives, and throughout all these different places. I'm missing a place, Kazakhstan. I might be missing another place, but it was pretty cool.
How do you initially find people and get in contact with them? Because it's a big operation, especially crossing borders, languages.
Mm-hmm. You're essentially setting up a new business in every country you enter, right? So, well, what I used to do is, because I knew that rule of thumb, whereby there's 3 types of people: those who will always buy, those who will never buy, and those who need to be persuaded to buy. What I did was I looked at the company that I used to work for, my competitor, and see their reports. And I cut out, more than a third of them from the get-go, because the people in the reports, they're either persuaded or they always buy. So they were the first people I went to.
Yep.
But then also I would go to the investment promotion agencies. So every country has a quasi-government, like a semi-state body that is set up specifically to attract foreign direct investment. Right? Ireland is actually a shining example of the best boy in the class when it comes to foreign direct investment, because we've been doing it since the 50s. Because we were a rural backwater, essentially, up until we were able to persuade big, mostly American companies to come and set up in Ireland. We gave them lots of tax breaks and stuff, but it was, the Irish government just wanted jobs for the people, and then they taxed the people, and they weren't there. So that was the setup that we would follow. Is whoever we know has already bought, we'd see them, but also working with the investment promotion agencies, and they would then put you in touch with other semi-state quasi-government.
Were they quite facilitating? You'd go to them and they'd be like, yeah, absolutely.
Mixed bag. Some were, some weren't.
Who was quite resistant?
Some countries in the Gulf are difficult up until the point where they're not difficult.
Okay.
Because, meaning that all of a sudden you find yourself in a scenario whereby you've got a relationship that then will facilitate all manner of things happening. But it depends, and you can't necessarily, as a young man, I used to just basically be banging on the door constantly. Because what I was doing was like 100 phone calls a day, cold calls, essentially, just trying to get the meetings. Because the more meetings you get, the more sales you make. So it was hard work, but it was good. The best was, a nice feature of it was that you would do deals with the hotels. So in the hotels, instead of buying advertising in your publication, you'd actually do a barter deal with them, whereby you stay there for X number of room nights.
Sure.
So I managed to, live like a rock star in the best hotels in these places on the back of this, while saving on expenses, because you're just getting started.
Yeah.
And then, I used to do a couple of these projects a year, and then if I was looking back, or any advice I could give to a guy in their 20s now, because it's easy when you're in your 20s.
That is one of the questions we ask. So I'm curious.
Man, if I could look back, I would have put my foot down, and doubled down on it. Whereas I was kind of like, I had the feeling like I'm doing well here. This is great, but you don't know what you don't know. And then you've got the 2008 financial crisis, you had the decline of the print media altogether. Then you had the Google ads changing the entire dynamic of how advertising works. So those three kind of dynamics really made it far more difficult.
So when did you close the business?
So I closed that business in when I did close it was 2015, but I should have closed it in 2011. And those intervening years where you're working harder than you've ever worked and it's not working, that's tough. I'd like to say it's character building, but I'm not sure that's necessarily the case.
So were you, as we were talking about sunk cost fallacy before this conversation, was it a case of you put so much into this business, it was your baby, you wanted to continue that, or were you working on other projects on the side?
No, I'll actually tell you what it was, actually. It was my ego. It was, and, ego can be useful, but it can also go against you. I made a mistake that thankfully I haven't made since, is that I conflated the company with myself.
Okay.
Whereas a company, brand name, whatever you pick, that should be a vehicle. You should consider it a vehicle to get you to where you want to go. And a company is not always gonna, unless you happen to make a Google or something, a company is, for the most part, not going to last forever, right? So it's a vehicle to get you to the next step. Whereas I conflated it with myself, and for me, it was, if this fails, then I've failed. Which, of course, there's in any business person's career, you're going to encounter failure, and it can sometimes be harder to take if you had success in the beginning. Usually, you get a bit of beginner's luck. The universe converges to give you some bit of luck at the beginning. Usually, I think, but if it makes it more difficult in a certain respect, because if you had failure after failure after failure at the beginning, and then you eventually reach success, well, then you've learned all of those lessons. Whereas if you got success early on, and then you get your arse handed to you, then it's tougher to deal with, of course. So,
I remember reading years ago that one of the biggest determinants of how successful you are in business comes down to timing. If you tried the exact same business right now, guaranteed to fail. It's the market conditions have completely changed, whereas you've got this exact opportunity 20, 25 years ago. It's golden. It's the period. And then that way you can work the growth cycle, go upwards with it, and then get there. I think what you mentioned there, I was in a similar state 2 years ago. I saw my main business not doing as well as it was a year ago. And I was thinking, what's the problem here? And similar to what you said, a lot of this comes down to ego. You attach yourself so far into the business. And one of the best things I did, I was traveling around. I was in Australia, Polynesian islands, Fiji, Samoa. Wow. And I don't want to say I took the summer off, but I really took my foot off the gas to look at what I was doing, because I think this is a big lesson as to what you said. Double down when you need to, but equally, if you're hemorrhaging money or you know what you're doing isn't right, then you need to take those steps back before you start bleeding 10, 20, whatever K a month into a business. And you look at it and you think, wow, if I could see the wood from the trees sooner when I should have made a decision, then it would have been such a different outcome. Or you would have slowed down, preserved yourself, and then ready to go again.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Timing is huge. Like, and then taking your foot off the pedal, so to speak, gives you a bit of perspective sometimes. Especially if you're in the Polynesian islands. What was that like?
Incredible. So I was speaking to some friends this weekend. As I told you, we went camping.
Yeah.
And we were talking about Fiji, and I said, in my opinion, Fijians are the nicest people I've ever met on earth. They're just so wholesome, relaxed, polite, friendly. They say that things move in Fiji time there, which is
okay.
But
I like the sound of that.
It's incredible.
Really?
I would, if you haven't been, I would definitely put it high up on the list. They've got a beautiful array of islands called the Usawa Islands.
Okay.
The mainland is splendid. It's best way to describe it would probably be, think of Ireland 20 years ago on a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Not much is going on, I imagine.
Not much, unless there's a match in Crow Park or something like that, yeah.
I've got a question for you based off of your first business that you were talking about.
Yeah.
What do you think was your proudest achievement from running that business?
Ooh. Wow. I'm not sure I've ever thought about that. My proudest achievement. I don't know if necessarily that'd be a straightforward answer. I know I had a couple of moments, like one that always sticks in my memory was I was coming to the end of a mission in Hong Kong. My grandfather used to be a cop in Hong Kong in the Royal Hong Kong Police, right? Side note. But anyway, I was there in Hong Kong. I was getting the train to the DHL offices, and it was my last meeting. And I was like, I had a target of, the cash amount that I wanted to close. And I was pretty far off the mark. And I knew I needed a big performance, right? In terms of, it's tough work going in. I've essentially lost my thing for sales because this took so much out of me, doing meetings like this. But anyway, I went into this meeting with the country manager of DHL. And I mean, I was bloody brilliant, if I do say so myself. Anyway, I walked out there with a contract. I got the deal signed there and then, right? Walked out with the contract. Proper money, 5 figures, decent money. And I said to him, sorry, so can I ask you, who should I go to make sure that this is paid, right? And he said, go and talk to Holly out there, right? So I said, thanks very much. I went out into the office. I found Holly. I said, Holly, listen, my name's Grant. I've just had a meeting with your boss here. Do you see this, right? I'm going to need that to be paid soon. Is that all right? She goes, yeah, thanks very much. I went, okay, Holly, I'll see you. I got on the plane that night, checked the ATM when I landed in Dublin Airport, and the money was there, right? And I was like, that's certainly the most.
Can you share how much the amount was?
It was 22 grand sterling, so whatever, But this is 2005, so it's like, whatever the inflation thing is.
So you're a man in his mid-20s with 22 grand just dropping into the account?
Yeah, like that was, but I made it in 45 minutes, right? But like, you got to be careful when you're doing stuff like that, because that's not every day. And also, it's one thing because it happens all at once like that. And, you get a few deals like that on a trip. But I was only doing trips like this maybe twice a year.
Right.
And the rest of the time I'm blowing cash, burning cash, taking out women here, there, and everywhere. You know what I mean? So it's and that's kind of the thing that because I would take my foot off the pedal and just live my life, which is nice when you're in your 20s, but then you get to your 30s, you get older, you start seeing what, how, the world economy, the global economy is not always rosy, right? And we're going into a period now where it might be more difficult. So, you got to make hay while the sun shines, but as long as you keep bailing it while it's shining is the main thing. So.
I think what you've just mentioned there is something I can relate to. I'm not, I don't live a flashy lifestyle, I like to think, but I've had those periods similar to what you've said where the money's rolling in, you check your bank account, you think, Jesus Christ, this is what I'd make in a job in a month. And then you start to you push it a little bit more. You just think, okay, it's fine. Well, if I do the exact same, as you said, you start to think of it as, I made 22 grand in 45 minutes. How can I replicate that? All I need is 20 more of those and I make $500,000 a year just off of these meetings. But then it's just about capturing that momentum and actually figuring out this is something I've really spoken to myself about and really worked on is how do I move away from living in dopamine, live in endorphins, and how do I, because we all have it, the ego, you spoke about this, but how do we suppress the ego so we achieve these successes and we enjoy the success, but we also say, actually, fuck that, I'm back on the horse on Monday. There's no, celebrate the small wins, smell the roses, and I can do that for Saturday, Sunday, that's fine. Get back onto it. Do you think you've had because it sounds as though you have, do you think you've had that moment where the penny dropped and you said, actually, I need to calm down a little bit. I need to move with intention, but be more grounded when these wins come in?
Yeah, I've definitely, when you hit your 40s, I think that happens naturally, And when you're in your 20s, I think if you're doing well I guess doing well is relative, but, if you're having, let's say, what is for you a big win, and then you look around at your friends and on the normal corporate career when people are doing 9 to 5s, right? It starts off when they're in their 20s early on. It's, it's difficult and they have to work their way up, right? Whereas if you're on your own trajectory and you have what appears to be a big win here, what I was doing was I was going, okay, well, I've made that happen. And everybody else is like grinding it out. So I'm like, why wouldn't I kind of take my foot, enjoy my life a little, right? Which is all very well, but you got to understand that at some point, running your own business, you're going to have your arse handed to you. It's in the post, right? It's part of you can't get to success without it, right? So, whereas the guys who have got the stable careers that are going up, they're on a trajectory, which means by the time they're in their mid to late 30s, they're in the ascendancy where it's like, and you might be going the opposite direction in comparison.
Is that what you experienced?
Well, my business failed and I went at it for 4 years when I shouldn't have, yeah.
How do you think you mentally dealt with that?
Well, I certainly wouldn't say I dealt with it perfectly. I'll put it this way. Eventually, I had to come to terms with the fact that the business was gone, was no longer viable, and I had to get a job. And for me, because that sounds normal, yeah. But for me, that was like abject failure. That was like just to swallow it and get a job, which was a joke because like everybody needs a job at some point in their life. But when I was in my mid-30s, I had to swallow it, get a job, and I was super determined. I did like 3 different university qualifications while I was working.
What did you do them in?
Computer science, business and finance. So just to reskill, because I had done a law degree previously, but I never became a lawyer. So it was humbling, is how I describe it. And then you're essentially building up, starting from the bottom again. But then when you've got to a level, then I'm like, okay, I'm back to let's go again. So that at that point, I went. Did you ever look at doing mergers and acquisitions?
It's something that fascinates me.
Really?
But it's nothing I've really looked into. So if you've got anything to share, then I'm all ears.
Good, yeah. So I went to, Because you see, you might have noticed, Joe, right, that you read these books about how to get rich and this, that, the other, but oftentimes they don't actually tell you how to get rich, right? I think there's more in this day and age. But when I was younger, they're all like motivation, inspiration, perspiration. They're not telling you the actual nuts and bolts of it, right? But there's a guy who does, and his name's Dan Pena.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And have you ever heard of him?
Yeah.
Okay, so I went to his castle.
Yeah, you told me in Scotland. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, because I used to just look at his YouTube videos because I found him very entertaining. But he gives away all the stuff for free. But I couldn't figure out what the process was.
Okay.
Or essentially what he was talking about, because he has so many videos, and you might not necessarily watch them in order or whatever. And he's using the military technique of, like a drill sergeant breaking down your ego and then building you back up. Right? That's his modus operandi, which, let me tell you, is not for the faint-hearted.
So how does it work? What would he do?
Okay. So you want me to break down the actual mergers and acquisitions game book?
Everything.
Okay. So when you go to the castle, first of all, it's very, it's expensive. It's like 15, 20 grand to go to the castle, right? Anyway, I'm the worst. I'll buy anything on the internet. So anyway, I went, but I will say this, that he is the real deal.
How long did you spend with him?
A week.
So you paid 15, 20 grand for a week?
Yeah. So I was one of maybe 24 people.
Oh, okay.
So he does these seminars every 3 months or so. So I went there in 2018. And look, first of all, I'll say this. He is the real deal, right? He lives in it. He's a guy from, he's a Mexican-American who lives in a castle in Scotland. he's a very angry man, but he will tell you what needs to be done in order to do mergers and acquisitions,
Sure.
which was why I was there, to learn this. And he's got a playbook about how to go about it. So essentially, on foot of that, I bought kind of essentially high street businesses, but then they were locked down during the Mexican beer. And after that, he had an all hands on deck meeting to all of his mentees from around the world in April 2020, and he said, "Get out of everything you're in, right, and get into one of two things: healthcare or tech." Now, at the time, I had been, because I reskilled in the computer science, I'd actually been involved with building software for international stock exchanges and central banks and stuff. But at this point, so I had the tech background, I had the computer science higher diploma and all that kind of stuff. But the multiples to buy a tech company are a lot higher. They're 8 to 10 times earnings, right? Whereas I knew I had access to healthcare companies and I could get them a bit cheaper. Because,
what's the multiplier on a typical healthcare company?
It should be, in an ideal world, 4 times earnings, EBITDA.
Yeah. Earnings
before income, interest, tax, appreciation, amortization, all that. So it should be 4, but I've paid 5 a couple of times. I just want to get the deal done, basically. Yep. So anyway, essentially acquired 3 of these healthcare companies through this methodology, and that meant that this whole thing of having to gee yourself up with the old school cold calls to get the meetings, and then with the meetings be on a train in Hong Kong going, God, I got to dig deep and do a bloody tap dance of a performance to get the sale, right? Which can take a lot out of you. I don't have to do that anymore because, okay, it's growth, but it's slow. I've got like 70 staff across 3 locations, and it's slow and steady wins the race.
Uh-huh.
And without this kind of big dash panic to make the sale, because in some ways things sell themselves. So it's a nice change of pace, and it's given me space to focus on strategic things. Like I did a kind of whistle stop tour of things. I went to Davos last January, the World Economic Forum there. Just kind of wanted to see what the globalists were up to and get a taste of that. And I have to say, I've already booked my tickets for next year. It's if you want to do business, that's a good spot to be.
I imagine so.
Yeah, it's really cool. And now I know where to actually stay, because when you look at Google Maps, right, Davos is in one place, and I was like, okay, I'll just be like the next town over. So I am the next town over as the crow flies. But the thing is, it's big bloody mountains. So I ended up driving 3 hours there, 3 hours back, around roads with hairpin turns and a massive drop on either side. Pretty bloody sketchy.
And where would the big boys stay?
They would stay either in Davos or on the next town over.
And will they just take helicopters over?
Yeah, they do take. Yeah, I was driving, and between you see the helicopters going, and it looks really cool. It looks like Airwolf going through the mountains on either side, and it was a lot of security. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Not to say that everything that I know is not to say that I agree with everything that they're planning up there, because that's another conversation. But from a business perspective, it was quite inspiring in terms of like really interesting people to meet, and that not necessarily all of them are evil globalists trying to take over the world. They're just other guys trying to make deals happen. So I went there. I went to New York and Washington, D.C. to these kind of blockchain events there. And I was just in Germany as well, in Mannheim. And Paris Blockchain Week as well. So now I've put together a plan that's going to change the way healthcare is delivered in favor of healthcare workers. Because a lot of times healthcare workers get the short end of the stick on a lot of things. And put together something that's going to help them, but then also continue on the M&A side of things, whereby we're acquiring more healthcare stuff.
So are you, with the care homes that you own, is there any way you would...
Well, it's home care, it's not care home. So we go to their house.
Sure.
So there's no property in the deals. We're essentially helping people live longer lives, maintaining their independence at home,
right,
and preventing the hospitals from being clogged up by, so we're the first line of defense. And it stops short of clinical for the most part. We do have nurses on staff, but we're essentially helping people with their basics.
Got you. So a few things that you mentioned to me before. You've got technology that's going to detect if someone falls over or there's an emergency. Is the vision to move this away from a home care business to a health tech business? Is that the grander vision?
I think that the vision is actually to expand the portfolio of the home care businesses, because these businesses need to be run safely, efficiently, responsibly. They need to be well led. We've got an outstanding rating by the Care Quality Commission here in the UK, and the standard of care needs to always be at a decent level, because it's not necessarily always the case that it is, right? Or that the continuity of care is always there. And that's why the challenge is really hiring staff and retention and recruitment. So we're going to continue with the home care, but modernize it for the future with a variety of offerings in terms of a digital asset for home care workers that they can redeem at the supermarket checkout and get discounts,
Yep.
which will make a real difference to them because it's not necessarily the highest paid job in the world, right? And so that's a core component of it. And the European Commission has actually brought us into their, as a strategic key use case, has brought us into the European blockchain sandbox to deliver this, to make sure that we have regulatory approval on all the various aspects of making sure that it's a utility token, not a security token, making sure that it's backed up by the European Central Bank as the market maker of last resort, meaning if the market goes crazy, the European Central Bank will buy the tokens and burn them so that it will have it'll be backed by something, essentially, but it will also be underpinned by the care companies in our ever-expanding portfolio. Thankfully, working with some guys who I met in Davos, who have the links to the various funding apparatus that can make that happen. So that, and then the units in people's houses. So if they fall, we can detect it. It goes to a care hub. We get in direct contact with them. We did a pilot, and I think I told you it saved somebody's life at some point. So, yeah.
How it's fascinating. How did you come up with the concept, the innovation, the idea?
Of the innovative bit of it. Right. So yeah. Okay. That's a good one. It was because I had, I'd say, two different, maybe three different aspects of things I had been concentrating on.
What were they?
So I told you about the when I did the computer science, and then I was involved with the stock exchanges and the central banks, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was around a thing called the legal entity identifier, which is a number assigned to companies to identify them on an international basis. It's like a passport number, because going back, a bit of background on it, going back to 2008 when Lehman Brothers collapsed.
Yep.
They couldn't identify which Lehman Brothers it was, right? So it had like 21 different legal entities. So back then there was a thing called the credit crunch. They wanted to know who their counterparty was, but is it this Lehman Brothers? Is it that Lehman Brothers? So in order to do so, they came up with this LEI number,
Okay.
which now has a digital identity extension to it.
Sure.
So I was involved with that whole world. I was pretty heavily involved in it. And then I had the home care, which is like the other side of the planet. From one's a kind of Wall Street thing,
Mm-hmm.
and one you're helping grannies, you know. So I was thinking about these things, and I got a bit of blockchain experience as well. And I was on the treadmill one day, and my wife was in the room, and it just came to me. I was like, why don't I just put the three things together? So the care workers are getting a digital asset, and their digital identity is in their wallet on the app. So when they go to the supermarket checkout, we know that it's them.
Uh-huh.
We know that the company that's allotted the tokens to them is a verified home care company, because they've got the LEI and the VLEI,
Yeah.
and all this whole system is regulatory lockdown with all of the KYC, AML aspects. So
I used to work in that, actually.
did you?
Yeah, KYC.
What did you do there?
I was at Credit Suisse, so I came as a consultant.
Uh-huh.
It was very boring stuff. It was just making sure that you're just checking tons of documents. So boring. Just checking documents, use cases come in,
Mm-hmm.
making sure that people's money is what they say it is. Is there any AML? What's the likelihood of it? But it's just, I quit that and I went full time with my business, because I
Nice.
thought I can always come back to this or banking.
Yeah. And how long did you do that for?
3 months. I was just working at a consultancy. It was It was just after university.
Right.
But just thinking about how much volume was going through Credit Suisse, and a lot of it was we had to do transformations. So I don't remember exactly what was happening, but at the time, so this was 2019. This was a big project that had to get done by, I think, 2020. So it was about a 2-3 year project. And when I looked at that, I was like, why would I stick onto this for the next 2-3 years? It is boring. I can always come back to it, but the KYC AML.
Yeah, I did something similar after college. I did 6 months in Citibank as well. So I was like,
How did you find it?
I needed to get out of there, man. I needed to get out of there. No, it was just not for me at all, because it's rough. Like, 9 to 5 is rough if you're of a certain outlook on life.
I was talking to you about my brother today, and fortunately he just got his degree back. He got a 2-1, and we were talking, and he really pinged a lot of the next 2-3 years of success on getting this grade, and he was a bit 50-50 if he would or not.
Really?
But he was talking about his friends and saying they all hate their corporate jobs, they all hate the city life, and it's I was talking to you about an Irish friend who I'm going to see in Valencia next week. But he said something really good to me. He said he listened to a podcast, and he said there's 2 types of people in this world. Life happens to them, or they happen to life. And I think there's such a big narrative of people who life is happening to them, and it's just month by month goes by, year by year, and all they're looking forward to is getting pissed on the weekend or their 3 holidays a year. And for me, not judging anyone who works in that life, because you need that to keep the economy going.
Yeah.
But for me, I just that point, and I think back to your point of you went back to a job for a little bit.
Yeah.
I didn't go back to a job, but I used that summer of 2023 to assess what are my options, what do I really want to do, because I think we play too much, especially when we're younger, really small games, which means we're only living or working month to month, year to year. Whereas what I did then, start 2024 actually, was I made a 3-year plan for myself, and I'm exactly where I said I wanted to be by this point, and I'm impressed. And it's the first time I came up with this concept.
Yeah.
But I think if you stretch out your time horizon, you kiss the frog a bit more often and do harder things, then it can push you towards that plan, and you work more sustainably, because I think we want success, we want the results in months or a year, not years.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That's something they say, that you overestimate what you can accomplish in a year, but underestimate what you can accomplish in 5. Yeah. I can't say I'm the best at that now myself. I need to stretch out the time horizon a bit, because patience has never been my strongest trait. But I think there's swings and roundabouts for everybody. But I think with some people, and I think actually with most people, it's important that they have a 9 to 5. So it just depends if you've got the kind of, I hate to use the word entrepreneur, but the entrepreneurial outlook on life. And if you don't, it's like, well, what else would you do? You need stability.
It's really your risk appetite.
Yeah. Risk tolerance as well, huh?
That's it.
Yeah, Jesus, and you need to have a high tolerance, because that's the one thing that's promised, is that at some point, whether if it's early on or late in the day, but it's not going to be a straight line. You're going to face challenges.
I try to lean in and abide by the concept of chosen versus unchosen suffering. The more you can do of chosen suffering, so whether it's, we were speaking about martial arts, putting yourself in conditions where you train 2-3 nights a week, and that battle tests you, or you say to yourself, I'm going to go into the sauna for 25 minutes, which is a bit of a push.
Yeah.
But it's saying, I'm not going to leave until I get there. There's a lot of people who get into the sauna, they'll just say, I feel awful, I'm going to leave at 15 minutes. But giving yourself that extra 10 minutes in there where it's disgusting and you're trying to count down every single second, but then saying to yourself, I did this. These are the positions that you put yourself in. And if you look at some of the most successful entrepreneurs in the world. They're athletes turned entrepreneurs. Why are they so good at business? My belief is that they've got this propensity to push themselves, the tolerance that you spoke about, because they've done so much in the realm of chosen suffering. So which happens to all of us, and probably the hardest form of unchosen suffering is when someone close to us dies. But you look at it on a micro scale with business, and it could be a lawsuit. It could be someone hasn't paid a really big invoice. Your best employee's just left, whatever. You're just ready for when these situations happen, so you can maintain a bit of a stoic approach towards these situations.
Look, I've never heard that before. Chosen and unchosen suffering. Makes a lot of sense. Did a 72-hour fast there a couple of months ago.
How do you find it?
Man, day 2, you get hungry.
I've only done 50 hours, 48.
I kind of like it. It was all right, but I mean, it's like anything. I ate so much when it was over that like I might as well not have done it. You know, they say that your stem cells, I don't know, kick in or something after 72 hours. So that's why I picked that. I don't know. I just watched too many podcasts where people talk. You know,
you just saw Dana White just flexing.
That was something. There like we are. Yeah, it was probably exactly that. Yeah, Gary Brecka talking about something like that. Yeah, but
did you feel any sense of gratitude afterwards?
I felt a sense of hunger.
Yeah, because I've done it twice, and again, only 48 hours. But I did feel good afterwards.
Yeah,
I remember the first time I did it. I did a CrossFit workout, I ran, and I did jiu-jitsu, and I was like...
During the fast?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I would just keep my life going.
The
CrossFit session, I was like, what on earth am I doing? I felt energy depleted.
Yeah.
But, no, I'll do one this summer. I normally do one every summer, but I should keep it more frequent.
I want to do another, actually, though. But it's that thing where you... like, because even if you go for a run in the morning...
Fasted.
Exactly. And then you compare it with waking up, eating a banana and going for a run. World of difference between the two.
What difference do you see?
I find it much easier after a banana. Whereas when you're fasted, it's bloody hard. It's tougher.
But do you think it's a case that you haven't conditioned your body? Your body's not used to it. Do you typically eat breakfast?
I do, yeah. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do.
Because I won't typically eat until 11, 12 o'clock.
Yeah, you're right. Look, all of these things. You know, I'm good for. I could do maybe 12 weeks getting things the way I know I should be, but then I don't know. I have a couple of pints. I fall off the wagon in terms of any kind of program I'm doing, and that's something I need to rectify about my own. Discipline is to keep things going beyond that kind of 12-week window.
But you said that you laid off the booze for a year, right?
I did, yeah.
So how was that?
Boring.
As an Irishman who likes a Guinness, I can imagine.
Yeah, I know, it was grand. But like...
what made you want to do it?
I got 2 stents in my heart. So I was like...
Sorry, expand?
So a stent is when there's a blockage in your heart, and they put a thing into your artery,
right,
and then open it up.
Okay.
So that your heart works better. So, my dad is a Paddy 7 stents. So it's just what do we say? Inherited.
Okay.
So. Can you do?
So what's the? I don't know anything about it. What's the risk factor? Could you expand upon what that means for you day to day?
What it means for me day to day is just right now it's fixed. So I just take tablets for the rest of my life and don't smoke. Could never smoke again. And just be generally okay, and then I'm fine. I'll live a full and happy life.
Are you quite mindful as to what you do?
I should be. Like you know, I'll put it this way: if they didn't catch it, because I just got lucky in terms of pure luck that it was spotted. But if they didn't catch it, it's so. But yeah, it's grand now.
Good.
So yeah, I'm happy out, and I can do all the things apart from smoke. And yeah, it's just a hereditary thing. I haven't lived the life of a choir boy, but I haven't lived the life of a pirate either. You know what I mean? So it's just one of those things.
So back to everything then. So you did you give up alcohol for 2024?
Yeah, the whole of it, because that happened early on, and I was like, that it scared the bejesus out of me. So, and then then it was actually those windy roads in Switzerland, in Davos, that that put me over the edge. I was like, I need a drink after that. So I'm back on the booze, but I got to go back off it now. But anyway.
And what would you say was the biggest benefit from taking a year off alcohol? Did you feel when it came to work you were more productive, more efficient? Any benefits there?
No, I didn't. To be honest, I'm sure possibly if but I didn't. I didn't necessarily feel like no, not that not that I'm particularly pro booze or anything, but like I know that folks would say, oh, it was great because X Y Z, but I was just like, they're like, oh, you've been off booze a whole year, well done. I was like, yeah, I know, bored. No, but so but having said that, I recognized that depending on what level of boozing you do, it's essentially a trap, because booze it's a drug, So there's, I certainly know that intellectually, but it's another thing, I still like a drink, but at the same time, I want to not want to drink. Do you know that way?
Yeah.
I'm not the worst. You know what I mean? But I'm not ideal either.
So away from that, very selfish question myself. So as I said to you, I just turned 30 a few months ago. Trying to look at planning my 30s, and I'm not someone who's super diligent with plans. I don't think I work best there. But when it comes down to business, I'd like to think I'm determined, driven, and I want to achieve a good level of success.
Yeah.
If I was trying to map out my 30s to that degree, is there anything you could recommend?
Wow. Okay. Map out your 30s. Well, I think, look, your 30s are an absolutely critical time in your life because, your 20s, you've already been through it. You know that it's the time for trying out as many things as you possibly can. And the stakes aren't that huge if you mess it up, right? In your 30s, though, things get a bit more, depending on how you want to live your life, of course. But let's say for the average man in the street, it's when things get a bit more serious. And generally speaking, people would be looking at settling down, getting married, having kids. That's not to say, like, I got married at 37. I had my first son when I was 40, right? The second one was 42. So, there's no law that says you have to do anything, and you have to be true to yourself. Is the most important thing. So, but it's possibly not a bad idea just to keep 30 is a nice age because you've got time. You can look out over that decade, but you could say, well, where do I want to be when I'm 40? And it might be that by the time you're 40, you'd like to be married with kids, right? And I think that's, something just to keep an eye on, because that's really going to be the defining thing of your life. Then when you come to the business side of things, well, I guess what the end goal is, if I were you, I would pick out a kind of target of where you want to be by the time you're 40. And then you have a solid 10 years where you want to have how to get there. And you'll probably get there a lot quicker if you think about it in that way. So I would say, in terms of where you want to live, what kind of lifestyle you want, in terms of, do you want to spend the whole year round in one location, or do you want to spend your winters in a sunnier climate? And then making sure that your business works or fits around that. So oftentimes you don't want to, for me, being tied to, there's a time in life to be tied to one location, and that's when you settle down with kids. But you don't necessarily have to be tied to one location if you don't want to be before that. But yeah, from a business perspective, I would say that you want to build something that works when you're not there, something that is generating income, whether you're driving it or not, right? So, in home care, it doesn't require my involvement to make sure that Mary's getting visited at 6 o'clock on a Monday, or Betty's getting visited at 4 o'clock on a Tuesday. It's happening automatically, because I have in place management, I have in place the staff, the computer systems to make sure that it's done, right? So from my perspective, I can concentrate on getting these kind of tech initiatives off the ground, right? So I'm essentially in startup mode, but I have the established business that's operating. And not to say that that's the be all end all, or not to say that I know what's what necessarily, because everything can always be more successful. But yeah, I'm not sure if that's the perfectly rounded answer you're looking for. But
no, I think it's no one's ever going to give you the perfect answer. They're just going to give you what they think is the best that they can give. So that's that question for me is something I've ruminated on with a few people, and it's interesting to get different perspectives. And I think you've summarized it best by looking at the harmony between work and life.
yeah,
And I think I'm not someone who wants to be an Elon Musk who's just hyper specialized with their domain success. I want to enjoy facets of life and make sure I can appreciate those small moments. And having that balance really is what I aim for.
Because what are you working for otherwise? There's no point, as they say, being the richest man in the graveyard.
Exactly. How do you? Because this is something that I've looked at. How do you move from running a business, the classic working on the business, not in the business?
Yeah.
As you just said, you've got making sure Mary's getting seen to and Betty's getting seen to. How do you really take that step back so you become I don't want to say the cliche CEO, but working on improving the mechanics of the vehicle as opposed to putting parts in the vehicle?
Yeah. It's, to a certain extent, that's kind of maybe the good thing about mergers and acquisitions, because when you're buying a company, the company's already operating. What I've actually found is that when I try to go fix it, I start messing it up.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, you can tinker around the edges with it, introduce new software sometimes, introduce new management sometimes is the main thing. Because essentially the vast majority of businesses, at least, come down to the people involved in them. And especially in the area I'm in, once I've got people who can manage things and manage the staff, in terms of dealing with their day-to-day issues that they have going on. And my job is just to make sure that every week everybody gets paid properly.
Yeah.
Right. So that's my main responsibility. And yeah, I think that that's what I would say is the making sure that you have the right management. And that's not always yourself. So I'm not the CEO of what I do because, okay, I'll be the CEO of the tech innovations I'm trying to bring to the table.
Yep.
But I don't want to be dealing with that because A, it's not necessarily my skill set, and B, I know from past things that when I start tinkering with things, I can mess up things that are already working. So you got to know your own limitations, and I know what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. Mm-hmm. So running the day-to-day of those businesses is not where my skills are best utilized. The strategic is, and acquiring more of them, that's where I come in. And making sure the managers are there to run them.
So you spoke about acquiring businesses and Dan Pena.
Yeah.
For someone who is just starting out, doesn't know where to go, where to look for, to get into the process, mm-hmm. What would you suggest?
Get into the process of M&A?
Yes.
Right. Well, I think well, look, first and foremost, I'd get a job in sales is the first thing I do, just to kind of equip yourself with the raw skills and the kind of grit that you're going to need. I kind of see that as a foundation for most things, actually. Even if you just do 6 months in a doing cold calls or whatever, but just so you know and have that string to your bow that, look, worst comes to worst, I can sell to survive if I need to. Yep. I know how to lift up the phone. I know how to get in touch with the decision maker, and I know how to pitch them and how to close them, right? Because I think that's a lost art in ways, with everything being on computers these days. If you can do that, there's two schools of thought. You could say that, okay, because everything's on your phone and on your laptop, maybe you don't need that anymore. And there's an argument for that, right? Having said that, I think it'll stand to you if you've even done 6 months doing that, right? Mm-hmm. Because, but maybe I'm old school. Maybe I'm out of the loop on that. But I would then look towards. I have a video course which sums up the M&A play in an hour, actually, which, it's free. I'm not selling anything, but I know that I do have a video which is pretty good about it. And otherwise, you could go through. Of course, I'd highly recommend Pena, because Pena is a master of it. Like, I am a minnow compared to him.
Where can people find your video?
It's on a school community, but that school community is being archived. I'll send you a link, and you can
We'll embed it in the
do. Okay, yeah. So it's it's just a commentary, basically laying out the process, and I was able to describe it in exactly an hour of the process you go through, which is pretty. So it's pretty substantive. When you watch it, you want a pad and pen.
So
put it that way.
For the M&A process, I imagine most people listening to this will be thinking what I'm thinking right now. Uh-huh. I don't have the capital.
Yeah. Yeah.
What does that look like? Let's say I was looking at buying a business for £250,000. I've seen a golden opportunity. Mm-hmm. How much do you think is the bare minimum I'd need to have cash down versus leverage? Who can I look for? Private investors? How much would a bank borrow to me? That kind of stuff.
Exactly. So generally speaking, if you have 10%, you could probably make it happen. But essentially, the methodology assumes that you're starting with nothing.
Okay.
Right. So and there are various ways in which you can leverage institutional investors, banks, and all manner. There's a lot of money out there. but it's very difficult to find, especially when you're starting out. I've always been wrecking my own head about where to make things happen, and that's part of an entrepreneur's. Not that I like that word, but anyway, it's part of the journey is that you got to find out how to get your hands on capital,
Yep.
right, and do so in a way that you're not necessarily grinding it out on a 9 to 5 with. So there are ways and means, and you've got to, in the case of if you're accessing debt, one of the key things is you've got to make sure that the cash flow of the asset that you're buying is going to cover that debt service. So you got to make sure the cash flow covers debt service if you're going to get a loan from the bank.
Sure.
So you got to make sure that it washes its own face, that this business makes enough money to pay the bank back.
Right.
And the banks have they have ratios concerning that. They're called debt. What are they called?
No, what's the typical ratio that a bank would look for?
Debt service coverage ratio, the higher the better. This is going back a while now because I haven't done it in a good bit. I think it was like if you've got 2, that would be good. If you're making twice the amount. And so I think they'll look at 1 point, sometimes 1.5 as low as.
So for instance, the business, is that on profit?
Cash flow, yeah, profit. So so essentially, any business is going to have the top line revenue that comes in, then the cost of goods sold, then the expenses. What you're left with at the end is your net profit before tax. So I think that the debt service ratio will be calculated on that one. Yeah, it's a while. I haven't done it in a while.
Give or take, yeah.
I've just been sitting on my 3 for the last while running these things, so I haven't been brushing up on it, but it should be. I should know that off the top of my head.
It's enough. I think that's enough useful information for people to get started, and they'll look for your course. I've got a friend of mine. He's mid-30s, and that's what he's really looking at right now.
Really, yeah.
Buying businesses, and I think there's this preconceived notion from younger people that in order to be an entrepreneur, in order to be successful, you need to go start your own business. You need to come up with this grand vision. You need to come up with the next Uber, WeWork, and I think that couldn't be further from the truth. I think you find an industry, and you either look to build something that goes into it most of the time, or probably the smarter approach is find a business that's maybe 20, 25 years old. It hasn't been tech enabled. And then you look at putting basic systems in and then looking at how do I make this more efficient? How do I focus on profit? And how do I grow the top line? That's the school of thought that I've been thinking about.
Yeah, and you're right, because one of the mantras around that space is that it's easier to buy revenue than it is to create it. Now, and there's a lot to be said for it. Having said that, if you are one of the things that I did was that because I had purchased a couple of companies in this space and figured out how to run them, then you can start one in parallel, and then that means that all the cash that makes you're not paying the acquisition cost of the business initially back on it, because you've started it, because you're already in the industry, and you don't necessarily have to know all about the industry first. I know that people say that that's ridiculous. You should know everything about it, but trust me, you learn on the job. A metaphor for it is to think that, like, if you're starting your own startup, that's like being in a field and building a plane and then getting that plane into the air and flying it. Whereas if you're buying somebody else's business, the plane's already in the air, and you just you appear in the as the co-pilot, and they show you how to fly it, but it's already flying.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I guess getting a plane off the ground takes the most amount of fuel. So
big time, and it's not always safe to do if you don't know what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if I'm I've got the spark now. I'm thinking, okay, I want to jump on the internet, or I want to go to a networking event.
Yeah.
What's the first place that I could look at going to look at acquiring a business?
Ooh, well, I know that there are a good few courses online. I can't remember the name of the people that do it, apart from Dan Pena. But he's of certain style. Not everybody's going to like him, because it's that drill sergeant approach. Hilarious. He's hilarious, but and he's also terrifying. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. But a business networking event. Ooh, I don't know. It depends on whatever. I wouldn't necessarily start at a networking event to do that. I would get a list. I would decide what industry you want to be in, and then I'd probably go to a broker that sells those companies. Because business broker. Because they say that you're not. Look, go to a business broker because they have the companies that are up for sale, right? And because there are so many companies out there that the person's at retirement age, their kids don't want the business, and they want to sell it because they're burnt out, or it's time to move on. And most companies don't get sold.
They just close doors.
They just bring down the shutters on it. It's perfectly good business, and you're there, the knight in shining armor, coming along, and there are ways and means that you can use whereby you don't necessarily have to pay 100% of the cost price up front. So it's called seller financing. You can finance it over time by making scheduled payments to the seller.
Yep.
So because you could say to them, look, if you I tell you what, you set the price and I'll set the terms, right? I.e., would you be open to the idea of I pay you 10% now, I pay you the rest of the 90% over the next 18 to 24 months on a monthly scheduled payment. And if I miss a payment, you get the businesses back.
I've heard of that.
Right? So what that does is you go, well, you don't need every penny of it now, do you? You just want your retirement catered for. And they'll say, yeah. And then once you've got the business, the asset, well, that's making cash. And you've already done your numbers on the due diligence. So the cash to pay them is coming from the business itself. So yeah, there are ways and means of getting started. And then once you're owning and operating these companies, well, now people can see that you've got a track record. You've done 3, 4, 5 acquisitions, and you've merged them successfully, and now you can go to the next level. So it's always there's always levels to this.
Are there a few industries? Say me here, I'm living in London. Do you think there's any industries that you'd pick out? You'd be like, if I was here, this is what I'd jump on.
Oh. Whew. Wow. Well, I think AI is obviously huge. I think the possibilities are endless. The thing is, I don't know where, it's so difficult to gauge where it could go. And because it's so new that, it's not necessarily, it's not necessarily a straightforward proposition. Having said that, though, the good thing about AI is, as well as everybody else does, like everybody's kind of starting at on almost a level playing field. And like most things, whoever works harder will, get wins. Having said that, there's a lot to be said for good old-fashioned businesses that are boring, that create turnover. So look, my industry is very staff-heavy, right? And a huge percentage of the turnover is just paying wages, right? However, I don't mind that. I actually like paying wages, ironically, but that's, maybe the industry I'm in, it's about taking care of people. But if you look at, there are some businesses that are, like a laundromat, you're not going to have much staff doing it. It's cash essentially, which obviously always pay your taxes. I'm not, but what I mean is you're not invoicing people and getting paid
Uh-huh.
30 days later. Then there's car parks, self-storage, stuff like that. That's it's not labor intensive, and there's something to be said for that potentially for some folks. Wouldn't be for me, but it'd be, you're not dealing with employees are great, but sometimes you're they're bringing their life to you, and you're trying to explain, listen, I've got a business to run, but in my industry, you do have to help your staff out when they encounter various problems. But if you're running a car park, well, that's not your problem. You know what I mean? You're not going to have any staff, if at all, or many staff, if at all. But yeah, I know I'm talking about two totally opposite ends of the spectrum, going from AI to, self-storage.
Mm-hmm.
But it just shows you there's loads of businesses out there. And, they vary. And not every business will suit every type of person.
How did you figure out the business suits you?
Trial and error. Trial and bloody error. I'll tell you, I used to think like one of the industries I was going into was at one point hair salons.
Okay.
So I thought, hair salons. Everybody needs a haircut. Be surrounded by beautiful women. Be careful what you wish for. I'll tell you. But as soon as I bought my 2 hair salons, the lockdown came. So but it was I did not have a smooth sailing experience in the.
So what's happened to them now?
Industry. Now they are coffee shops.
That you own? Or?
No, I sold them on. So, but yeah, you got to get in where you fit in. Sometimes you got to joke a jive.
I always find I try to lean into. I try to follow Ikigai. If you're familiar with the Japanese concept.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Just figuring out. And this was something a mentor said to me years ago. He said, the person who is passionate about what they do, loves what they do, is going to outperform the person who's just doing it for money. And I think there's a bit of give and take with that to an extent. But if you picture me or you versus a woman who's been in the industry for 10 years and her dream is to run a hair salon, chances are she's probably going to run it better than you because she knows all the ins and outs.
I know.
On her social media, that's all she's checking out, how to do nail acrylics, how to do extensions.
Yeah, I know. What they might even do is take your whole business across the road.
Sounds like personal experience, right?
But actually, the Ikigai, that's a really good one. And not ironically, I don't know, but that's what I'm actually doing with this healthcare bit. Because, like I told you, that when I had that eureka moment on the treadmill, I was able to bring together the LEI, the blockchain, and the home care for this solution that I'm working on. And that is right bullseye in the middle of my Ikigai. So I get to, because I guess a side of me wants to, I want to have a kind of quasi Wall Street, Davos, blockchain thing, right? But then home care is the opposite. But I'm essentially bringing them together with this project to kind of, because the good thing is, from a demographic perspective, well, not that it's a good thing, it's not, but I guess from the perspective of the business is that we're all getting older at the same rate, right? And so people are going to need care. So right now it's $348 billion industry, but it's on the road to go to 1.4 trillion globally in the next 10, 15 years. So
what's influencing such a jump?
Aging population. And you see in our societies, like it used to be the case that older people got taken care of by their children who lived beside them, but now, of course, the kids don't always live right next door to their parents anymore, and they've been taxpayers their whole lives, and now it's often the government's scenario whereby they're paying for people to come in and help them with their daily needs. So that's the same. yeah, that's what it is. And
So many moving parts. Makes sense.
yeah.
They always say the two industries that will never die: childbirth and death. And I
Yeah, well,
suppose
unfortunately, unfortunately, that is an unfortunate aspect of what we do, is that people necessarily pass away eventually. So we're not. That's not the business we're in. We're in the business of keeping them happy and up
best care
until that
possible.
point. You know what I mean? So, and then it doesn't necessarily always end there. They get older, go to a nursing home sometimes, um, if need be. But we can help them to maintain their independence as best they can.
Dignity as well must be a big factor.
Exactly, and and that's why we've got to make sure that all our staff are police vetted, trained, and it's a judgment call when we're hiring people to make sure that their values fit with us and everything. So we're going to make sure that, because it's hugely important. Because one day we'll be the ones receiving care from somebody.
So yeah, Grant, to wrap it up, where can people find you and what's next for you? Sounds like you've got a lot of exciting stuff going on.
Where can people find me? Well, carecredits.io, and I should have prepared that bit, shouldn't I?
We'll put it all in the description.
All right, yeah.
LinkedIn,
LinkedIn.
carecredits.io.
Yeah, and
you're going to put your video in as well.
Yeah, and I'll put the video down there. So because that's just given that we spoke about it, and it's not doing anything out there at the moment. So why not? In case anybody's interested, it's a good whistle stop tour at least. So.
And what's next for you?
I wake up every day and I look at a thing that says, I want to make CareCredits. I want CareCredits to make the lives of care work, or to improve the life. I want CareCredits to change the lives of care workers for the better. And then I have a thing from Sermon on the Mount, asking it shall be given, and seeking you shall find, and knocking it shall be opened unto you. So I read that every morning. That's my Ikai, guys. So just keeping that going and try and make that happen is the main thing. Yeah. Nice one, Joe. Thank you very much.
Pleasure, Grant.
Really appreciate it.